who are we? CCLA difference what? Difference makers.
So my virtual participants, hello. Sorry for technical difficulties. I'm just trying to figure this out. So I want to make sure that that everyone can hear and that you can see. So I have my lovely assistant over here too, who's helping me out. So Kim over here, so she'll be monitoring the chat room. So she can also share out any of your responses during the presentation as well. So do I need to, if I am addressing them, do I need to look right at the camera? Okay, all right, hey. So here we go. We're gonna get started today. So hopefully you are able to see the 2025 challenge here, and you can start to work on it a little bit. Start trying to figure out what you can make out of the numbers 2025. So happy New Year, 2025. Using each of the numbers once. And only one. So obviously the 2 we'll get to use a couple times, and you need to use it exactly one time. So all 4 numbers need to be used to create each solution there on the list. So I'm gonna let you work at it for a few minutes, and if you figure one out, go ahead and put it into the chat. If you figure out that this one is 3, then you can put in your equation. You're coming up with equations, and you can use whatever symbols that you like to solve. I'll have you relay. So can you just put a hand up, your Zoom hand, if you like, to let me know if you have gotten more than 5 solutions so far, more than 5 equations.
Yes, 2.
Yes, 2. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Okay. There's a few in there. Awesome. See a thumbs up. Thank you. Got some parentheses, symbols being used.
Oh, Debbie gave me thumbs up, so she must have 5.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So I'm going to let you kind of just noodle with that a little bit on the side. And we're going to go on to our next slide here. I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Clara Christensen, and I work here with CCLA at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And I am one of the professional learning leads, and my focus is mathematics. So if you're ever in town and you want to come to one of our professional learning opportunities, then please do. Don't worry, there's a link to the slides that will be dropped in the chat at the end of our presentation as well. So not to worry, I just don't want to spoil any of the surprises as we go along and work out our problems. So we like to do a connection before really diving into content. So in the chat, I want you to describe a moment when was the last time that you heard one of your kids say, that was so much fun after math class? So think about that for a moment. What do you think the lesson was like, and why was it so much fun, that particular lesson? So go ahead and drop your responses into the chat. I'm going to move over to the computer here and see if I can see some of your responses. I wonder if it needs to get refreshed over there, maybe. Has anyone put any ideas in, Kim?
Just a question about
Yeah.
expand the view to slideshow mode because the program has also.
Ah.
I'm asking Caitlin to go find some to see if we can do that.
Okay.
I don't want to mess with it because there's a lot.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of time going right now. Okay, all right. So maybe your response is like, I haven't heard that in so long. If that's the case, please feel free to go ahead and put that in there. The last time that you heard that everything was super fun in your math class. We getting any ideas there, Kim?
Oh, yes, here we come. Sunny says, I used to watch students drag their feet coming into math class. Later on in the year, those same kids would say, you made me love math because you love math.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, our own passion for sure. Definitely inspires kids. Absolutely. When we're into it, they get into it. Yeah, that's great.
We grab it. Probably they can grab it.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it's over here.
And then we have Debbie. I can't remember a specific lesson, but they often liked it when we worked at the boards or Desmos.
Ah, okay. So it's maybe some sort of gamifying, maybe through Desmos, getting up, moving around the room, using the board.
Desmos also.
Yeah, awesome.
Sunny says when they understand how algorithms work by connecting the concepts, we all cheer and say,
boom. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So thinking about engagement, right? So how do we have fun in our math class? And we use all these different tools on how to make that happen. Right. Hopefully today, going through some of the tasks and some of the talking about these different ideas that we have today, will give you some more strategies for making math fun and engaging. So looking back at the 2025 task, think about whether or not you used factorial. If you didn't use the symbol for factorial, factorial means that you're multiplying each number. So a factorial 4 would be 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So if you introduce the symbol for factorial in your solutions for the equations, are there any more of those that you can solve? So go ahead and try that. See if there are any other solutions, any other equations that unlock if you introduce factorial. Oh, I see in the chat splat. Yes, I actually had a splat in here. I think I actually kept it. I'm not quite sure. I started running out of time, but splat is awesome. Yes. So she solved for 8. 2 plus 2 plus 5 minus a factorial, 0 factorial. Awesome. Yeah, so just even introducing a simple symbol in the middle of learning can accelerate learning. So just opening up a different strategy and a different idea that kids might not have thought about. You might also think about using one of the twos as a square. So it doesn't matter if you put that up in superscript and you have, 2 squared. That's 2 of your numbers already used up. So that might be another way, right? So kids, as they start solving, will come up with these different ideas. And when they need one, you can easily plug it in and in context and unlock some of the mathematics for them and make it super fun. So let's move on to the next one. I think I just talked about that. So thinking about what does engagement look like, feel like, and sound like, just go ahead and drop that into the chat. When you're engaging in that and then chatting with each other online, you obviously can't hear each other, but what does engagement actually look like when you're engaging in that way? Or imagine it in a classroom. What does it look like, feel like, and sound like? Go ahead and respond in the chat if you're in the chat. So just giving a little time because I know you guys are typing. So I see Debbie says it could look like someone staring at the screen silently because they're thinking. Engagement feels comfortable. Yeah, okay. Anyone else? All right, another 5 seconds. Wish I had a clicker. That's okay. All right, so today we are going to be looking at experiencing firsthand how open mathematics tasks increase engagement and connecting to the framework, particularly in learning acceleration. We focus on UDL and SEL. Those are the 2 aspects that I will be focusing on mostly today. And then considering the evidence-based research for teaching with fun and engaging open math tasks. So grounding our work, the 5 core components of learning acceleration, we focus on priority content delivered with evidence-based strategies. And we take the approach from a universal design for learning, SEL, and culturally sustaining pedagogy to work with the priority content and implementing those strategies. So today we will really be focusing on those 2 areas, UDL and SEL. We'll also ground our work in the California Math Framework. So from the framework, what we already know about how students learn mathematics. Students learn best when they're actively engaged in questioning, struggling, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, and making connections and explaining. In other words, when they're making sense of the world around them. The research is clear that powerful mathematics classrooms are places that nurture student agency in math. Students are willing to engage in productive struggle. Already, we've seen twice the word engage. So the new math framework is Be careful of the cameras right there. Okay. So sorry, technical stuff going on here today. So we know that the new math framework is really promoting engagement. That's a huge part of the new math framework and the CDE's recommendations for engaging in equitable math instruction. And why do students do this? Because they actually believe that their efforts will result in progress. So moving down, this is about the intellectual authority of mathematics and how we often have misconceptions about that. And in these classrooms, following in line with these recommendations, mathematics represents far more than just calculating. Active learning experiences enable students to engage. Again, we see engagement in a full range of mathematical activities. Through these experiences of justifying, questioning, solving, and so forth, students develop identities as powerful math learners and users. So we just want to reference always the math framework and know that this framework is really behind us when we are thinking about how do we engage kids? How do we promote equitable practices in the math classroom? So if you haven't dived into the math framework yet, the first chapter is really just the overview and setting the purpose and so forth. And then in chapter 2, we get a deeper sense of what these 3 dimensions of systemic change are and the 5 components of equitable and engaging teaching. So that's just very briefly, I'm just going to touch on those points. So this second point, active engagement through investigation and connection, is where we'll really be thinking, where we'll really be focusing today. Definitely, if you want to explore these other dimensions more, we offer lots of professional learning here at Santa Clara that does work with developing an assets-based approach to instruction and cultural and personal relevance. So today we're just mainly focusing on the second dimension of systemic change. The 5 components of equitable engaging teaching put forth by the recommendations in the framework: plan teaching around big ideas, use open and engaging tasks, teach towards social justice, invite student questions and conjectures, and prioritize reasoning and justification versus just the answer, right? The answer is not the mathematics. It's the strategies and the problem solving and the communication of ideas. That's where the mathematics lies. So just in the chat, looking at that list right there, what connections are you making to your own teaching already? Looking at those 5 practices, equitable and engaging instruction. Oh, I see Sunny's response there too about engagement. That's awesome. What are some areas that you're already feeling, yes, my practice reflects this? Prioritizing reasoning and justification, awesome. Using more open and engaging tasks, inviting students' questions and conjectures. So these are assets. We talk a lot about assets here at Santa Clara. We want to be promoting an assets-based approach to instruction and thinking about our own assets and the things that we bring to the table and things that we know we can do already, and building on that enhances our capacity. And I think that what's so valuable about the framework is that it's really encouraging us to do that, to live it and breathe it like that, and to model using our own assets, right, to build off of those in our own instruction. So today we're going to be focusing mainly on these 3 areas: the use of open engaging tasks, inviting student questions and conjectures, and prioritizing that reasoning and justification. So we're going to transition a little bit, open versus closed mathematics. I'm going to give you a moment just to review the 2 columns there, the 3 columns, and comparing and contrasting the closed mathematics tasks to open math tasks. I'm going to give you just a moment to peruse it on your own, and then I'll give you a prompt for the chat.
While they're doing that, Maria put in for the previous prompt, invite student questions and conjectures, and Debbie said teaching around big ideas can be challenging, identifying the big idea you are teaching around.
So go ahead and drop in the chat. What do you notice? What stands out to you? You might use one of the frames. I noticed that. It's interesting that. I wonder about blank. What's standing out to you about the difference between closed math tasks and open math tasks? So open tasks have more active engagement and go deeper into conceptual understanding. Absolutely. Thank you, Lori. Closed math tasks seem to be more about the answer, not the mathematics. That's Sunny. Thank you. He says, I mean, that closed math tasks can be less engaging. Some students ask for these kinds of tasks because they don't have to think. I get it. Thinking is hard sometimes. Open math tasks allow us to learn more about the students as learners. Absolutely. That's our chance to elicit student thinking and to really understand what they're thinking about and what they're understanding and to find the logic, right? And what it is that they're thinking. Where is that foundation? Where are their entry points? And what might be in the way of helping them progress? What misconceptions might be revealed? Open math tasks allow us to provide proper scaffolds. Absolutely. If we don't know, if we're just answer based, right? How are we going to scaffold that? We need to find out what's going on in that whole process of thinking. And we can do that when we open up mathematics tasks. Absolutely. Thank you, guys. All right. So what about the 2025 task makes it an open task? And you're welcome to refer to that list. What in the 2025 task makes it open? Standing near the camera so I can see the chat. Start anywhere, use any operations, more than one way to get a number, a solution. Yeah, absolutely. So as you're continuing to think about that, I just want to point out that over here, when we have multiple correct solutions, okay, fostering, I guess you guys can see me on the screen. I don't know. Can you see me on the camera and then pointing at the screen? Okay. Yeah, it's a little hard, huh? Okay. Yeah, so if you look at the open math task column in the first section here, number of correct answers, there are lots of different solutions for when we're writing these equations for the 2025. Lots of people can find lots of different ways of writing those equations, right? Using various symbols. Sometimes we have tasks that are called semi-open, where there might be one solution, but there are lots of ways to get there. And that's really that second box down there, encourage exploration of various approaches, strategies, and representations to find the different solutions. So there might be one single answer we're trying to get to, but there are lots of different ways to get there. And that allows for that openness and that strategic thinking and the communication that can happen between kids. So a closer look at research. This is John Almarodia, I think his name is. He examines John Hattie's meta-analyses and he explains them But John Hattie has actually done all of this research for us to help us figure out what are the things that are most impactful for kids. And I'm going to be honing in really on the SEL and the UDL aspects. I'm going to play this video so that we can all see. I'll just set it up a little bit. It's cued in already. He's going to be talking about what a meta-analysis is, and then how John Hattie has gone about averaging all of the different factors. Uh-oh.
For example, this pile of,
Can you guys hear that?
let's say that every book, every article, every journal in this pile was about homework. Should we give homework to students? Should we not give homework to students? What type of homework should we give to students? Should we grade it? Should we not grade it? Do we involve parents or families in the homework task or the homework assignment? You wouldn't have to go far into this pile to find contradictory findings. One study says homework's great. Some studies say we should involve parents and families. Other studies say it should be the student. And we have to go through and find the studies we need to inform our decisions in our classrooms. What a meta-analysis does is it takes all of the evidence, puts it together, and then provides an overview or an average of what the research says right now about a particular influence. And the example we've been talking about is homework, but there are other things. For example, phonics instruction versus whole language. What about one-to-one laptops? What about the use of clickers? Right now, you may be asking about distance learning education or web-based learning. Those influences all have a body of research behind them or associated with them. The meta-analysis allows me to take a wide-angle view of that particular influence and then use my own professional expertise to decide how to not just identify that influence, but then implement it in the classroom. When working with a meta-analysis, one of the questions you may have is, well, how do you take a group of studies and look at them all together, average them out? Isn't that comparing apples and oranges? It's a good question. Meta-analyses calculate something known as an effect size. An effect size, well, to be quite blunt, is a way to take apples and oranges and compare them using something called a standard deviation. So here's how it works. We take the findings from one study and the findings from another study, and we use a formula to calculate the effect size. Now, there are lots of different ways to calculate an effect size. The Visible Learning Database uses a Cohen's d to calculate effect size. And in a way, it takes away the units. And so the units of comparison are no longer relevant. It does it in standard deviations. So I'm no longer comparing apples and oranges. I'm neither comparing apples nor oranges, but I'm looking at growth through standard deviations. The Visible Learning Database is right at our fingertips. www.visiblelearningmetax.com. When you visit that site, you have access to the 320 influences and the meta-analyses that helped build that database, which means you can go and check this out on your own. But one of John Hattie's goals is to make all of this information publicly available. Here's the data. Let's see what it tells us about what we do in our schools and classrooms.
So I'm going to pause him there. And
What is a
I think we actually get, there we go. So I'm just going to explain a little bit more about his work here. So when I show you these slides here, he's taken this hinge point, right, of 0.4, which is the average of all of the influences, right? Because he talks about how the research can be, for every study that says one thing, another study can say another thing. So when trying to figure out what actually impacts learning, he finds an average, and that average is the hinge point of 0.4. On average, this hinge point here is equivalent to, if you were just doing all of these influences, or that particular influence all year long, a kid would demonstrate a year's worth of growth in school. Okay, So that's just the average. So anything above that is going to be much more impactful. It's going to accelerate learning. And anything below that, it's not necessarily super negative if it's just below that. Remember, we're talking about an average, right? But it's not the best, right? When we're thinking about the limited amount of time that we have in a classroom and how we want to be most impactful for kids, we want to be above that average, right? Because a lot of our kids come in and they're struggling and they are behind, right? Or they're having a hard time with certain aspects, and we need to figure out like what is it that we're going to be able to do to engage them and be equitable. What are the practices and the things that we're going to do to help them move forward? So we don't want to mess around with it. You know, we don't want to spend time on the things if we know that they don't work, right? So here, the average point at which is the 0.4, the average point at which a given factor is influential enough for a student to gain 1 year of growth in their year of schooling. So let's look at math learning in relationship to social emotional learning. So enjoyment, simply just enjoying mathematics, goes over and above average, so 0.46. So we're just encouraging them to enjoy math, right? And we're increasing the amount of fun and engaging tasks that we're doing in class, and they're enjoying it. We're already starting to accelerate learning. Happiness. When we're in a state of contentment, we are more open to experiences and more likely to take on challenges, and we're more ideally situated to broaden and build on our understanding. And that we're already jumping up to 0.53. Right? So very impactful, having students that are happy in class. We know that when kids are feeling good in class, they're more likely to learn better. They're more likely to learn, and they learn better. They learn more, and they're more engaged. The tasks that teachers design elicit students' curiosity, leverage students' knowledge, and provide motivation to engage deeply with authentic mathematics. So this is also from the math framework. The math framework, when it says something about curiosity and fostering curiosity, I wondered how much that had an impact. So I took a look at John Hattie's work. Curiosity has a 0.66 impact. Okay, so that's the effect size of that. So we're already looking at close to a year and a half. We're accelerating beyond that, right? Of a year and a half average growth for a student whose curiosity is piqued. Simply by fostering enjoyment, happiness, and curiosity, we're already creating we're already able to impact kids in their learning. So thinking about the opposite side, anxiety. So I'm not talking about just a little bit of stress, right? So because stress can be the cause, right? So a little bit of stress sometimes is good. If you think about athletes and when they're about to race, like there's a little stress going on. If they were completely relaxed, they would perform differently, okay? So we're not talking about necessarily stress in a moment. We're talking about deep anxiety. And you can see that that's already starting to put a student back, right? That's decelerating their learning. So we can see here, right, and this R right here, that is the robustness factor. It's on a scale of 1 to 5. That means that there are tons of research studies out there, and all of these meta-analyses, which are massive studies of lots of studies, saying that this is decelerating, right? About a year's growth when students feel anxiety. And when you really take a look closely at those studies that John Hattie has used to determine this, many of them, the vast majority of those studies have to do with math anxiety and with mathematics in general. So that anxiety is real. Self-efficacy. So going back to what does that mean and how does that impact learning? So that's an individual's sense of confidence in how they're making decisions. This includes their belief in their ability, right, and their capacity to learn and execute the necessary behaviors to achieve. So, and thinking about all of these factors, what are we learning here? What are we noticing? So go ahead and drop into the chat. What is that? What are we on something here? When we think about happiness, enjoyment, curiosity, anxiety, what is it that we're learning from all of this? What are you thinking about as you're processing that? wondering if you're seeing something I'm not. So if you are at home, please go ahead and drop in the chat what it is that you think. What is this? What conclusions can you draw from the effect sizes that we've just looked at related to social emotional learning?
Debbie says we want to provide opportunities for students to have fun and be curious about the math they will be learning. We need to scaffold learning experiences to minimize anxiety.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also thinking about, exams and assessments, how can we not make those so anxiety ridden?
And then Sunny says creating a safe learning environment is pivotal to student learning. And Maria says our emotions impact how we learn.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for engaging with that. So SEL, we'll just dive a little bit into this. So thinking about the competencies and what does that mean when we're talking about SEL and social emotional learning and the state of mind that we bring to our mathematics class? SEL is a process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to do these 5 things here. Okay, so these first 2 is where we're going to focus a little bit more today. These are more focused on the mathematics class, but the others also relate. Right. So you can imagine the relationship between the teacher and the students, but from student to student, especially as you get up into the middle school grades and high school, those relationships, they matter and they affect how a student is learning in the classroom. So developing from an early age those SEL skills, right, and that knowledge and awareness of ourselves and our math identities, how we can manage ourselves when we get frustrated or nervous about something, all of that has something to do with how we can engage with mathematics. So as we dive in a little bit more, we can see that the research shows that our social emotional learning has a high impact on our mathematics learning. SEL leads to improved academic outcomes. So when we focus on these areas, right, we were just saying in the chat there that we want to make sure that kids feel emotionally safe, right, in our classrooms. And their emotional state definitely impacts that. And it impacts those, it has been shown to impact academic outcomes. SEL has benefits that are long-term. SEL is a wise financial investment. We want kids that are able to self-regulate and be able to communicate and have good relationships with others. That's how we have a positive and happy and productive society. So we want them to be able to engage with these things, and also like that's how they're going to, when they go off into the world, that's how they're going to engage with their careers and their colleagues and at the university level and so forth. So this is an investment in our future. Social and emotional skills help improve lifetime outcomes. That's what the research says. You live longer. Happy people live longer. So these 2 areas here, you can see when you look at the actual competencies broken down into these 5 areas of SEL, that identifying emotions, social and cultural identity, recognizing our strengths, having a growth mindset, believing in ourselves. We just look at self-efficacy. Examining biases and having a sense of purpose, right? These things all are related to what happens in our math class. So, I should probably point at my computer, huh? If I walk towards the screen, then you guys can't see me as well. These are also related to stress, right? And perseverance and problem solving, right? That's a standard for mathematical practice. So managing our own stress and how we solve problems, right? Whether they're mathematical problems or in life in general, these relate to self-management and the competencies. We can also see a couple of other ones, and that we think of when we're thinking about problem solving: responsible decision making, identifying and solving problems. So particularly when you dive into social justice mathematics, thinking about how the impact of what you're doing and the data that you collect might have an impact on society overall. So thinking about like what kinds of problems do we want to grapple with, analyzing situations and consequences, reflecting on one's role to promote individual and collective well-being. So there's lots of different competencies. The first 2 are the areas that probably present themselves the most in mathematics class. So in the chat, what do you think? How do you see the connection between SEL and student engagement in athletics? What connections do you see? Our emotions impact how we learn. I see that. When students feel valued and capable, they will rise to the occasion. Absolutely. It's everything. If kids don't feel safe and connected, they won't participate. Absolutely. So building that confidence, we want them to feel secure in our classrooms, and that's how they're going to engage. Absolutely. It's everything to do with it. Well, we know that ourselves even when we come to work, right? So if we come to work with a state of mind that is feeling unhappy or stressed and anxious and so forth, we feel less engaged. Right. So feeling connected to our environment, the people around us, definitely helps us even in our own work. We know that for as well as adults. So we're going to do a little bit of a task here. This is from Mysteries, if you've ever heard of that. So I want you to just take a moment and put in the chat, how many do you think are in the jar? How many pencil sharpeners do you think are in the jar? Good place.
They lost down again. Right, my memory. I have some-
Okay.
The chat keeps scrolling up.
Ah, gotcha.
It's coming in. 19, 25, 20, 22, 18, 17 to 25, 18.
All right, I like the estimation. Awesome. Okay. So the reveal, there are 22 pencil sharpeners. So let's try another one. How many in this space?
Uh, 19.
19 maybe. Okay. So our range was 17 to 25 before.
16, 16,
Okay.
19, 15, 11 to 16.
All right. So we have 18 there. Okay. So let's do one more. This time, well, you guys in the chat room, you guys are writing down anyway. But this time I want you to write down your response and then say, why do you think that? What number and why do you think that? What do you think is in the third vase? I can feel you guys typing through the cyberspace.
They were all combined into one.
Oh, interesting.
29 equals 22 plus 7 more. I can see 6 on top. I'm assuming there's 1 or 2 that I can't see. 26 to 30 because it's more than the 22, but not enough for the 22 plus 18, just a little more than the 22. 28 because it looks like about 6 sharpeners are balanced on top of the original ones, which was 22.
All right, so we're going to go on to the reveal. Whoopsie. There we go. So there are 30 in that one. We got one more. So again, write down your guess and then why you think that for number 4.
Debbie says we couldn't see too.
Do they not see what I'm seeing on the screen?
She wrote that before.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Oh, we can see 2 of them in there. Got it.
Uh, 27 equals 30 minus 3.
Okay.
22 to 30. Ha 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 ha, says Sunny.
We got 5 more seconds.
She says 25.
Okay.
Maria says 25. It looks like 5 are missing.
Okay. All right. So before I give you the response, I want you to type in the chat, why is it you put in the answer that you did for number 4? How did you think that through? Whatever it is that you decided on for the 4th one, why did you decide on that?
All right, let's see. Using the previous correct total. Maria says, I compared the jar to the 3rd jar. Sunny says 25 because it was less than the 30 jar, but more than the 22 jar.
So a lot of comparing, right? Comparing and contrasting to previous amounts. Looking at like what might be hidden. So thinking about that too. Using your previous estimations, right? So 27 pencil sharpeners in the last one. Did anyone actually get that?
I think so. I think that was Debbie's original. It keeps.
All right.
She said yes.
All right. So when we think about this kind of mathematics, okay, what does the engagement look like, feel like, and sound like? So imagining you were in a classroom, right? It's difficult when it's a little different when you're online. But what does that engagement feel like when you have a task like this?
Maria says fun, a little challenging, but not too challenging.
Yeah. So right at the level where we all can gain entry into the problem, right? There's very low stakes. We're using lots of different kinds of skills, right? So thinking about previous estimates and using that to jump off of and go into the next idea, right? Like getting it wrong the first time around doesn't matter. Yeah, it's okay. But if you had said 100, I might have asked you a little bit about why. If you had said 1, okay. So, but you're all using your logical reasoning, right? And you all have entry into the problem. So when you think about opening up mathematics, that's what we think about, right? How can I give an entry?
Debbie says looks like analyzing, looking for details. Sounds like Estimating, reasoning, giggling feels like fun. Sunny says it was low anxiety and so many possibilities and reasons to justify numbers. Explaining strategies allows others to use those tools next time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what we want kids doing, right? So even just opening up a math class with something simple like this, there are tons of these ideas, all of these estimetries, there are tons of them, and they don't all look the same, right? So that is a great resource, and it is also linked into the slides when you get a chance to look at them later. So thinking about why was this open, right? So we talked about the entry points, right? There are lots of different solution paths. Yes, there's an answer. There wasn't a mountain there, so it's not necessarily totally open. But when we look at that second line again, the solution paths and strategies, there are lots of different ways that we can explore, right, how we estimate and justifying it to somebody else, right? Well, this is what I said last time, and it was a couple off. So that's why I went down or why I went up the next time, right? And what did I notice about the pictures? Someone pointed out the details that they see, right? So really focusing in on precision, right? But using estimation as a launching pad. So to accelerate learning, so we're going to kind of shift over to UDL now. So thinking about, like, as we've been talking about, engaging all of our students and creating an environment where they are socially and emotionally feeling safe and comfortable and happy and having fun, right? So that's one way of providing access. We also want to be thinking about how can we engage even more students, right? What elements of design can we implement to engage all of our students? So just looking at the foundational concepts for UDL, we have thinking about really what are the barriers, right? What might be the barriers in the design? If you think about the estimatry that we just did, we can all look at that jar, right, that vase, and estimate. Right? There weren't even any numbers in the beginning, right? It was just looking at an image. So, and making an estimation and then having a conversation about it. So really lowering the amount of barriers and thinking about that from the get-go. Variability is a norm. It is contextual. It can be planned for, right? We can plan from this frame of mind. We want to develop learner agency. So the more often you do things like estimatries, the more confident and comfortable students will be in sharing their ideas. Setting clear and rigorous goals, everyone should have access to that. Just like with anything, we can't expect students to engage with grade level content if we never give them grade level content. We can't expect students to meet rigorous goals if we never give them rigorous goals. So we want to be thinking about, what is it that we can do to reduce the barriers so that they can meet those rigorous goals. So anticipating those barriers and really going to that website and really looking at what are the different UDL, if you look at the UDL website and the recommendations there and the principles, what are the design options? They're great reminders. It's a great resource to use to look at that grid and think about what are the different ways of representation and engagement and so forth that we can integrate when we think about our student population in our classrooms today. And that's going to vary from class to class. So let's do an example. So taking a look at this example here, many of you have possibly done which one does not belong, and oftentimes there's a reason for any of them, right? That they might not belong. So students can quickly start to come up with something, but when we take a look at this, just put in the chat, like what comes to mind? Which one do you think does not belong? And why? Horizontal ray, it's the only ray. So honing in on that word ray.
Vertical, oops, my chat keeps scrolling up. Vertical line segment, it is the only vertical line. Horizontal line segment with midpoint, only part with a midpoint.
Mm-hmm. So multiple options, right?
Array because all the other ones have a definitive end, or you could say yellow because the rest are green.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, and we're all adults, right? We've all had this. So if we think about kids and how they might look at that, and then we do an example like this, now when you take a look at it, what happens? I mean, a student very commonly will just say, well, one of them is yellow, right? The others are not. So let's examine the difference. Thinking about UDL, what's the difference between A and B? What are some differences that you notice? B is visual. We knew the meaning of horizontal, vertical, row, and segment. Students may not know that specific vocabulary yet. I love that word. But could do the second task using their own language. Absolutely. And it's one of the points that I was hoping that you guys would notice, right? So this is an opportunity for us, right? And allowing them to look at B, we provide a context for that vocabulary to come in, as opposed to looking at these big words, horizontal, vertical, line segment versus a line versus array, all of these different vocabulary terms. Some kids might know it in your classroom, right? Like this is a beautiful version of a number talk. Some students might know that vocabulary looking at the image and some might not. And so that's really an opportunity to use and leverage all of the different knowledge in their classroom to enrich the vocabulary of everyone, right? The barriers in A, you might notice like it's all words, right? Other than the green and the yellow, there's so many words in there and you really have to piece them together to figure out what does that mean and create that visual in your head. Versus with B, we provide that visual up front and then we can contextualize that vocabulary, opening that up for more students, right? Like what's the difference between, what's that one in the corner, in the upper right-hand corner with the dot in the middle? What do we call that? Right? There's your opportunity.
Lori said pictures rather than words allow access to kids who are not strong readers. And then Debbie added on, you could provide a word bank for B.
Yes, absolutely. And even like an extension exercise, like matching or labeling and really, echoing and elaborating and reinforcing vocabulary. And it's also a chance when, someone does know that you elevate their status in the classroom, right? Like, oh yes, you knew that word. So what was that word? Let's talk about that a little bit more. So modality. So thinking back to John Hattie's research, modality, how we actually present the content has a huge impact on what happens with learning. And accompanying with visual, having possibly an auditory format. When we provide those kinds of adaptations and multiple modalities, we can accelerate learning, right? Beyond what might be average in a school year. So some of these you already mentioned, right? So adding pictures, if we give a student 3 minus 1/4 versus having an image and then having supporting images that explain, oh, so $1 is 4 of those, right? And having that conversation about taking away a quarter, right? A lot of kids can understand money, right? So once they know the money, then that's something that they can anchor themselves in, as opposed to this 3 minus a quarter and show your work kind of a thing. So having the images definitely helps. That was someone mentioned having the visuals and the pictures. So another strategy that you can use to open up a problem. Okay, so one of the things I want you to walk away with today is thinking about how do I open these things up so that they are engaging for students? How do I open up problems? So comparing these tasks here, the context has been manipulated to be able to open it up. So thinking about this first one, which is greater, 1/4 or 1/3, there's one answer, right? So yeah, kids can have a conversation about that, but we change the context a little bit and we're going to have a much richer conversation with students, which is greater, 1/4 of a family size pizza or 1/3 of a mini pizza. So you imagine, well, what might kids start saying with that, right? What kinds of conversation is going to come up, and where is it? What's the discussion that's going to happen with them, right? And that's going to be a much richer conversation than just how do we solve this problem? A quarter versus a third. Looking at the next one, find the mean. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, I would get a whole book, a textbook, do 40 of these, right? Find the mean of this set. And it's just a regurgitation of the same procedure over and over and over again. And there's not a whole lot of rich conversation that can happen from that. But here, if we recontextualize that, a group of friends go to a restaurant and their meal costs are recorded. If the average meal cost was $15, what could the possible meal prices be? Explain your thinking. Now, they're going to come up with questions, hopefully, right? Like, well, wait a second, we need to know this information. We need to know this information, right? But that's the rich mathematics, right? And when we change those variables, whoa, what if then we start to extend their thinking. So, okay, so I'll give you an amount of friends. And then, oh, one person didn't show up that next night. How much would it be now? Right? Or 2 more people came and then they ordered meals. What might change? So grappling with that is a much richer discussion than simply find the mean 40 times over, right, on the worksheet. Comparing these two tasks, so solving for X, here we have just a regular algebraic equation solving for X. And then we have write an equation to represent a situation. So it could be this situation, right? But a situation where a person starts with $10, earns $5 per hour, and needs to have at least $25. So just changing that context a little bit and thinking about which problems we select and what we present to kids when we're doing particularly whole group, so that we can have a more richer discussion and provide more access. So changing context is another strategy, aside from visuals, auditory, and connecting with different modalities. So here's a task, Aunt Martha's cupcakes. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this task, on this problem here, solving the cupcake task. Now, you don't have to have it all perfect or right. I just want you to grapple with it a little bit. So Aunt Martha has 5 trays of cupcakes, and she describes how they were arranged. There are 100 total cupcakes on the trays. Remember that there are 5 trays. The first and the second tray have 52 cupcakes. The second and the third trays have 43 cupcakes. The third and the fourth have 34 cupcakes. And the fourth and the fifth have 30 cupcakes. How many cupcakes are on each tray? The first, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. So I'll give you a couple minutes just to grapple with it. All right, team. So I'm going to move on to examining some of the strategies. I just wanted to give you a little moment to grapple with the task itself and just to see what that feels like. And then I'm not sure where there's my cursor. The solutions are linked into the presentation. I just kind of wanted to show you some of the different ways that people try to solve and how they start. So this particular student here, this is based on a task and some research that the authors did around this, and just examining the different solution paths that kids come up with. So you can look at figure 1. Ben's action mirrored those of many students. He starts to solve the problem by splitting the cupcakes evenly over the first 2 trays, and found a total of 99 rather than 100. So has to go back and adjust, but there's a solution path there, right? Armani found that his first attempt resulted in 99 cupcakes also. He described how he adjusted his trays to find the correct solution. So then we also see down here, we find additional ways of solving, algebraically, systematically listing out the different kinds of the trays themselves, and then using a single variable here. And this last one, Jack and David worked together, and they that involved a single variable. So you can see that like the great variation and the different ways that students attempt to solve. You may have used one of those as well. For me, I just started thinking, okay, well, if I've got 100, then I'm going to divide them up into 5 trays, and then I would have started working from there. People have different ways of solving, and exploring that and having that rich conversation is really what the mathematics is all about. When we focus on encouraging that mathematical reasoning, 0.96 is the effect size. So we're looking at over 2 years of potential growth within 1 year, right? Across the year, when we focus on mathematical reasoning, on solving mathematical problems, and similar to the cupcake task, we are, by the very fact of all of this research, right? All like thousands and thousands, millions of students. I want to say it's like 300 million. It's about the population of the United States. How many students John Hattie has looked at this work and determined that 0.96, when we're focusing on not on rote procedures and not on rote problem solving, not on the algorithms, when we're talking about how do we really think and engaging in that mathematical reasoning, we can really, really accelerate learning for students. So thinking about what's the environment, right? Going back to that SEL, what kind of environment am I providing a nurturing environment where students are able to have a growth mindset, make mistakes, and learn from each other and practice those competencies? And am I also giving them opportunities really to engage with the mathematics and reason their way through and talk about that, right? And actually communicate with each other, because that's where we're going to have the most impact. Constructivist teaching, right? So this is another evidence-based practice, right? Thinking about how do students actually construct meaning in their minds. So when we have learner-centered active instruction, where students are exploring ideas, propositions, explanations, solutions, and then taking action on those, right? Maybe that's revising what answer they came up with, or taking a look at a different solution pathway, or finding a more efficient way, right? Whatever action that follows that. That's also over a potential of over 2 years growth within a year. So thinking about going back to the mathematics framework, instead of teaching through narrow questions that engage some students or inaccessible to others and leave still others bored and unchallenged, teachers, with this new framework in their recommendations, teachers focus on big ideas and connections. They teach through more open tasks that students can approach in different ways. Such an approach allows students to explore questions of interest and work on mathematics at different levels. So you could see, just even with the responses with the cupcake task, different levels of mathematics and different ways of engaging with that and use of different prior knowledge, right? That's what's going to make it interesting for kids. So no conversation about SEL, no conversation about how do we advance kids in mathematics and accelerate their learning. We'd be really remiss if we left out the teacher-student relationship. It has a huge impact on students, or a significant impact. So accelerating learning can happen when we really focus on that relationship. So the impact size is 0.62. John Hattie's studies show that student and teacher relationships are very powerful. Students will take risks and grow when they are part of nurturing, growth-producing relationships. So that's not just with you, but that's with each other as well, your students, the student-student relationship. But that respect from the teacher and that conversation and that the body language, the teacher credibility, whether the kid believes that you actually mean what you say when you say you believe in them, right? Like all of that contributes to that teacher-student relationship, and we can see that that has a significant impact on student learning. The number one influencing factor is collective teacher efficacy. So this, I didn't want to leave this out because it is the number one factor. If I'm looking at 300 something factors, I want to know what number one is. So number one is collective teacher efficacy, the shared belief by a group of teachers in a particular educational environment. So you at your school with those teachers and your administration and at your school site, that community, having that collective belief that you have the skills to positively impact student outcomes. And the reason I bring that up is also because of what we talked about early on with your own assets, right? Like, what are you already bringing in? Right? Like we need to believe that we have capacity and the skill set to be able to impact student learning. Because number one, off the charts, 1.36 is the effect size here. So we can see that that is way off the charts, right? If 0.4 is the average impact over a year, we have 1.36. Right. And I actually, like, lo and behold, heard back from John Hattie. I asked him because I was looking for it online. I sent him an email and I thought I'm never going to hear back from him. And he actually emailed me back and he said, I said, well, if 0.4, is that equivalent? That's 1 year. Is 0.8 equivalent to 2 years? And 1.2 equivalent to 3 years? And he said, yes, that it has the potential, right, to accelerate to that. It is a one-to-one correspondence with 0.4. So that's just, that 0.4 is just the average of all that research out there, right? So we have the potential, right, with this, really believing in each other and in our students and our own capacity that we can do this, right? That we have the skill set to impact our students and their learning. And thinking about all of these different effects that we've considered, right? Enjoyment, happiness, having fun in class, feeling connected, having that teacher-student relationship that where kids really believe that you believe in them. Thinking about the different modalities that we introduce into our classroom and how can we make sure that everyone is accessing this, especially our ELLs. If you're working in California, it's very likely California has the highest ELL population in the nation. So it's very likely that you have an ELL in your classroom, if not many, and engaging in things with the pictures versus the words, right, can really engage those learners so that they have access to that content as well. So in your classroom, this is what engagement can look like. So I'm just going to leave you with this video here on a teacher's implementation of these kinds of open mathematics problems.
Today, we are going to do an activity that is very similar to the activity that we did yesterday, where we have to find a number.
When you first started adding up the harder stuff, I wouldn't get it so well, like I wouldn't understand so well. And I didn't ask questions because then I thought everybody would say like I wasn't that smart. When everybody else was like getting it, was answering the questions, I got really worried that I wouldn't be able to get it.
When the pennies are put in groups of 2, there's 1 penny left over. When they are put in groups of 3, 5, and 6, there is also 1 penny left over. But when they're put in groups of 7, there are no pennies left over. How many pennies could there be? What does it mean when we say groups of? What do you think that means?
That means like something about groups of specific numbers, it says when it's asking about it.
Okay, can you give me an example just to make sure?
For example, 5, there's groups of 5, 2 groups of 5. When my teacher helped us have a long time to answer questions, it felt like answering a problem wasn't exactly impossible. You could like figure it out.
Now, yesterday, we had a bunch of tools that you could utilize to help you. And you can use anything you want, anything that you think you and your partner would need to solve this problem. I think as a child, you feel powerless sometimes. And so in my class, I absolutely try to give the students choice in lots of things. I have regular seats, I have places where kids can sit on the floor. They just need to make the right choice. What's best for them to work successfully?
I have an idea. What if we use the 7 first? Because then we can figure out firstly how much groups of 7. That is a good idea. In math, you could tell that some people didn't understand so well, and we could just ask questions freely without being judged. We felt safe. That's the problem again. Answer is when all these match the criteria, and they're like one remaining left. Like for example, it's fine to make mistakes. Like you go fast in math, it's more likely to make more mistakes. Some people can go really fast and get all the answers right, and some people can go slow and still get all the answers right. And it's okay to go at your own pace.
When I first came across Joe's work, I thought that it really spoke to me in that she's directly hitting a need we have with kids learning math, which is everyone is struggling at some point, and whether your struggle is now or your struggle is later, if you stick through it and you utilize things around you, friends, the internet, manipulatives, whatever it is, that you can find yourself through it. I think the most important thing that I wanted to show today was that my students embraced the struggle, that no one gave up, not one group, no matter how hard it was.
The process of a pit was like the top was like something that was easy, and then when you start going down, it's like and you don't understand the problem and you start getting worried and you get confused. And then when you're climbing out the pit, it's like when you're getting relief and like you're understanding the topic, and this topic is getting more and more easy for you.
The amount of brain work that's going on right now is unbelievable. If we stopped right this second, I would be dissatisfied knowing that this stumped so many people.
So I think the string would connect from one concept to the other concept, and there would be a little paper, and it would have like why they are connected together. When I looked at the string and the little answer, it helped me understand why those two concepts I can use them together. It was the students who were coming up with the connections. So a student would raise their hand and say how those two concepts are somehow related.
I just think it's so important that people start adopting this type of teaching in maths, but also everywhere. I mean, there were kids today that when they figured something out, they were so excited. We do things in math class that we can do for reading and for writing and for understanding nonfiction text. All of it is, very fluid. And so when you start using these types of techniques and this kind of pedagogy, I think that you end up seeing how successful kids are throughout everything.
All right, so we just have a few more minutes. I hope that left you with a bit of inspiration. I would love it if you would go to the QR code on the slide. And then Kim, would you possibly mind dropping in the chat the link to the slides in case people just want to click on that link? Again, my name is Christensen. If you're in the area or if you teach in Santa Clara in Santa Clara County, then please come to our many professional learning events. If you have questions, you're very welcome to email me directly. My contact information is there. So the link to the slides is there. And then there's also a survey. If you could do me a great favor, I totally value your feedback, and it's how I improve and how we improve here at CCLA and serving our teachers. So please do me a favor and fill out that feedback survey. That would be awesome. Thank you. And thank you guys online for your participation as well. So I just changed the access. Thank you. For letting me know that, and now it should be available. If you still have any problems, just let me know. Or let Kim know through the chat.
And do they have access to the slides as well as the slide deck itself? Okay.
Yes, yeah, I just changed the access on that, so maybe you have to refresh possibly at home or virtually. Maybe I need to refresh. I'll try that. Ah, I see more people in there, so it must be open now. Melanie, we will drop it back in there. Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So let's see there. That was the very end there. Yeah. So let me open it. I know I found it online, so let me see. Hang on, I'm gonna put the microphone down and see if I can figure this out.
Oh, it looks like Sunny put it in there.
Ah, great. Okay. I know I have it in my drive, so I was just gonna open it there. Share. There. Should be available now, at least like via the slide. You're welcome to copy any of my slides. Totally fine. Does that work?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Thanks for sticking in late in the day.
We're all saying.